Robert, medical marijuana passes in Florida, 71%. Do a lot of people smoke marijuana in your industry, in the rock star business?
Oh, no, not at all. Never.
Yeah, I bet they do.
I mean, it's not just musicians and artists and actors.
You're right.
And whatnot. It's
Snoop Dogg's been arrested for marijuana related charge. Bill Maher, he's not a rock star, but Bill Clinton admitted to it. Right? Yes, Snoop Dogg, believe it or not.
Yeah.
President Barack Obama, who we're going to be calling later to talk about it. Jimi Hendrix, Marilyn Monroe, Galifianakis. Yeah. It just goes on and on. The people that admitted to
Jack Black. I like how Jack
Paul
Black.
McCartney, rampant user of marijuana, right? Who knows who this guy is?
Paul McCartney admitted.
It's Johnny Depp in the background.
Paul McCartney admitted to smoking pot for 60, that's in 60 years. Like, is that not kind of a little scary?
I mean, I think that
Bob Dylan.
A lot of people.
Bob Dylan he was the guy who introduced the Beatles to weed.
Well, John Lennon had a big, almost got deported. The government almost used it as an excuse.
He pissed him off when he was running all those billboards. That was quite ballsy.
It's crazy what the government will do, has done, right? But as far as legalized marijuana, it's funny because you mentioned to me that some band member had asked you to ask me, or maybe just asked you, but I know we've gotten calls on it. People think, especially the kids, so much misinformation out there that now in Florida you're going to be able to possess marijuana, and if you tell the police officer, if you get caught with it, to use it for medicinal purposes, or that you have a prescription or got it from a doctor, that it's going to be no problem and it's going to be used as some sort of defense.
You have to have like a card, right?
Yeah, you there's criteria. There's certainly criteria. Everything from who grows the marijuana, who dispenses the marijuana, and I want to talk to you about that seminar that you went to about obtaining a license to dispense, right down to how you get it legally, right? Because you need to be evaluated by a licensed Florida physician, first of all. He or she is going to need to determine that you suffer from a debilitating medical condition. Right?
Do you have any examples of those? I mean, we all know glaucoma,
right? That was what
cancer, seizures. Do you know any others?
Well, there are some codified ones written in the legislation of all of this: HIV, cancer, Parkinson's, ALS, right?
So you can't just like have a headache and go down to your friendly neighborhood doctor and try to get a prescription to marijuana, or can you?
That's a good question, because what the legislature is trying to avoid is people that don't need it but want it going and getting a script from a doctor. Okay, and there are doctors out there that if they can make a buck off of billing a patient's insurance company for coming in and saying, hey, this headache is a debilitating medical condition, they're going to do it.
So we have a little concern that they're going to be kind of, not in a
doctors
sense,
being
pushing
drug dealers.
Just like, not having no reserves to write a prescription for pain pills, which we all know are so dangerous and so addictive. We're now a little afraid that might be happening with medical marijuana use.
Of course. I mean, doctors wrote prescriptions for bottles of alcohol in the 1920s during Prohibition. The pain pill problem is still rampant, but was huge, out of control in Florida with the clinics and the doctors writing prescriptions and dispensing pain pills. I hurt my back, with needing. They would be dispensed without even so much as an MRI or prior medical history. Now, there's, as you could probably imagine, an overwhelming number of people who are going to seek obtaining and legally smoking marijuana in Florida by going to a doctor and feigning an illness, right?
Yeah, that's not a good thing. But chances are these people would have just seeked it out and found it, from their local weed dealer, regardless.
Well, yeah, but I mean, to obtain it legally. Now, first of all, it should really just be legalized, right? I mean, if you sit from a criminal defense standpoint, how I see the statute used, the effect on minorities, the effect on people on probation, the testing positive for marijuana when you're on probation and get sent up the river to Florida State Prison when you're otherwise complying. I mean, it's crazy. There are so many people that have criminal records because of marijuana, and it's kind of stupid. But now that it's legalized for medical purposes, doesn't open up any floodgates for anybody as of yet, because you got to go to a doctor, much in the same way that if you're going to get pain pills, but you need to meet the criteria of this debilitating,
so let me ask you this:
serious medical condition.
What is someone in store for if they get caught with a bunch of weed in Florida?
The same thing that they've always been in store for. Okay, now in Florida, the criminal laws have been changed. Now municipalities, jurisdictions can give their officers the discretion to issue a citation rather than making an arrest.
And what would that citation? Would it be like a $250 fine or something along those lines?
It could carry this. Could carry a blemish on your record, right? If you pay it and don't.
No, it's defend it would be a misdemeanor, right?
Well, if the citation, that would be a notice to appear. Okay, so instead of making an arrest, if it was criminal, that would be what's called a notice to appear. We've had that forever. But a citation would be more like a traffic ticket, non-criminal in nature and penalized
unless
payment of a fine.
Unless it was beyond a certain weight?
Right, right. Yeah, the 20 grams of or less is misdemeanor possession. Okay. But we're not in Broward County. We're not seeing citations, non-criminal citations written, despite the fact that the county's got the authority to do so. I mean, the funding, the prosecuting of these cases is relatively simple, and if funding is at all controlled by numbers, which of course it is, they're not going to intentionally cut these out. Just like in Broward, they're not creating diversion programs where they don't have to for DUIs and things like that. So if you get caught with marijuana, and it's not the low-grade marijuana issued from a dispensary because you've got a terminal illness or you don't have a marijuana card, you're going to be prosecuted. And you're going to have a criminal record if you don't win the case. And you could go to jail. You could go to prison if you're on probation for a felony, even if you test positive for it. So people are in no way shielded from simple possession, right? And people that think that this is going to be a situation where they're just going to open a dispensary or they're going to be able to grow marijuana.
Not going to happen.
Right. And you went to a seminar to learn a thing or two about this. Not because you wanted to open up a dispensary.
Yeah. I as I mentioned in some of the other webcasts, I attend a lot of conferences, everything from medical to, politics. You name it, like anything. I work at conferences. I'm a tech. So it's pretty interesting. I learned a lot about that, and it wasn't just from like a bunch of hippie stoners who were there to celebrate the possibilities of opening their own dispensaries. It was the assistant to Governor Rick Scott was there to really kind of clear up some false impressions of opening dispensaries. And it's kind of sad because a lot of these conferences they're promoted under this veil that they're going to help all these young entrepreneurs get a their own operation going.
And they're the entrepreneurs, right? They're capitalizing on giving seminars where so and making it seem like, hey, you're going to be able to fill out some licensing fees. You're going to have a dispensary, make $1 million and have all this.
They're making money. They're really taking advantage of a lot of these let's call them young entrepreneurs,
right?
And they're really just trying to get people to come buy tickets to see the conferences.
Almost like one of those things. Hey, I'll show you how I made $1 million flipping properties. Just buy my 12 CD set. Yeah.
And as Governor Scott's assistant explained to us, he really kind of burst everyone's bubble that was there, having interest in starting their own dispensary. He basically came out and he said, "Listen, it's not going to happen.
Thanks for coming to the seminar.
He said,
this is a bunch of baloney."
Yeah, he said there is no way anyone anyone there. This is like there was an audience of probably about 400 people.
He
said there's no
to, Miami's version.
And the thing, it was really interesting. He explained what has been happening in regards to the whole history of all these states jumping aboard and opening the door to medical marijuana usage. But he said basically it's not regulated by the federal government. So the first state that came on, they wanted to discourage people from starting their own dispensary. And, so there was no, the fees, the admission fees, or I'm sorry, application fees and the insurance fees, because it wasn't regulated, they made it really expensive to discourage people from doing it. But that wasn't, they didn't just leave it there. What they did is they made the application really like a huge application that had like 500 pages. Made it
prohibitive
and made it really complicated. And then they provided all these guidelines for very sophisticated security systems, all the way down to like a Fort Knox style safe, like $100,000 safe.
But we have problems in other states with from the growers to the dispensaries of rampant theft and almost the development of more organized crime. And Florida is seeking to prevent that. And Florida's really been strict about applications. Right? I mean, just to grow the stuff. Right? There were 5 growers chosen. They were already established. And
it was interesting because he started by explaining how this whole process has gotten out of control, having not been regulated by feds.
Well, we've seen it before, though, Robert. And I get it. I get that that the idea is not to have the ability for everybody just to open one of these up like you'd open up a convenience store, right? It's quite the opposite.
And what happened was, as each state decided to go ahead and legalize it for medical use, because it wasn't federally regulated, what they did is each state made the application more and more expensive.
So they made some money.
They looked at one state looked at for instance Colorado, and they said, well, they made their application $10,000. So the feds aren't telling us we can't make it more, so let's make it 15. So in a nutshell, not only did the application fees grow in all these guidelines, because all these states are wanting to discourage people from opening their dispensaries, but the application itself grew, and what
they can't do is that there is something in play. I mean, we've seen this with marijuana and other substances before. Permits to grow, permits to possess, the government had been pretty much open about the fact that they weren't giving any of these certificates or authorizations out in the 40s. Same thing, marijuana. So they can't. The states can't do something that's tantamount to not dispensing lawfully what's required by the legislature, but they certainly can hike the fees and requirements up, which cuts out any young entrepreneur, any old entrepreneur that doesn't have a ton of resources, history with regard to dispensing. I mean, because it's a pharmacy. It's an act as a pharmacy, really dispensing marijuana.
Yeah, the governor's assistant basically said, by the time Florida opens the doors to it, he said you can expect to need to have about $1 million liquid to open a dispensary, and that's just to get the security systems in place, the application fee, and then he said by then he wouldn't be surprised if the application itself, which you would need to be very familiar with, would be something like 1,200 pages. He actually showed us,
and I don't think Florida's codified exactly. I figure they must at this point. It's legalized. They've been gearing up for it. They have the requirements for the growers were insane. But I was looking today, and the privatization, individuals that hold the seminars on how to obtain to get the permit to dispense, the clinics that have been trying to create the doctor-patient relationship in anticipation of medical marijuana, right? Clinics where you pay a consulting fee or an evaluation fee, and you start developing this this idea of a debilitating medical condition so that you can obtain your marijuana card, because you have
hey doc, I got a headache, can you give me a prescription to
I know you're going to see, we're going to see that type of thing, because out of all the debilitating medical conditions that have been listed, okay, and like similar conditions, right? I mean, certainly there's autoimmune disorders other than HIV that would qualify, but post-traumatic stress is in there, okay? And
for like veterans,
something happens, right? You know, you think about it with vets, right?
This is kind of
terrible,
scary, actually.
Terrible experience, but people have post-traumatic stress disorder that results from a lot of things, right? Okay, I'm not concerned about possessing marijuana because I suffered the paranoia without smoking it, because I was worried about what my dad would do to me, and even now I'm getting fearful. I've got post-traumatic stress because of what my parents would have done to me if I would have smoked marijuana when we were in high school.
That's hilarious.
Right?
Yeah, and I know your dad, and trust me, his dad was, especially, you know, when he was a little younger, was a splitting image and as big and as strong as Hulk Hogan. Oh, actually, I think it was like a couple inches shorter, but like basically like his twin.
10 of me could pop out of the ground with, not that I would ever want to do. My father is a tough guy, but he's a great man. I love him very much, and thank you for pointing me in the right direction and keeping me off of out of trouble. But you know, I think that the marijuana thing has probably gotten a little bit lax with regard to parents. I think people are more accepting of it now, even than they were than they were when we were in high school. I mean,
now marijuana is actually a hallucinogen, right?
No, it's barbiturate. No, it's not a hallucinogen.
Now, what's the difference? What's the difference between a barbiturate and a hallucinogen? I mean, a hallucinogen will make you.
Well, I mean, getting into the receptors in your brain, the synapses of your brain with a hallucinogen, you know, you kind of fill in the blanks. You see things that aren't really there, aren't happening. Your perception of reality is significantly altered. You see that in things like ketamine, mushroom psilocybin. It's the drug that you get when you lick a frog.
Like a frog,
right? LSD, which is wheat rust. Okay, and these were now that you mention that, you know, the idea behind LSD acid, which has no medical value or medical purpose whatsoever. It started out, I think it was Timothy Leary that promoted LSD. It was going to have all of these amazing medical benefits.
So not smart.
Right, it was going to just open up the mind and just change everything. I think it was used to combat alcoholism. Ecstasy was used to help relationships. I'm sure it did for about 24 hours, right? But when it comes to marijuana, aside from whether or not you think that it should be legalized or not, I think it should be legalized simply because of all the people I've seen put in the system.
Yeah, the courts get flooded and it's expensive for taxpayers.
Oh, it makes money through privatization and all across the board, and people are against it. But, I mean, ultimately it's ruining the lives of a lot of young people and minorities especially.
You mean those who get in trouble basically, and then they're in the system per se?
Yeah, I mean, you're in the system. I mean, if a misdemeanor marijuana possession can prevent you from getting into school or getting a job, but more importantly, if you're on probation
how
for doing something,
be productive for society?
Right? If you're on probation, you test positive for marijuana. Most people violate probation because they test positive for marijuana. You know.
And then what are they looking at if they've violated probation?
What you would have gotten originally. So let's say you were dealing in stolen property. Some kid takes something to a pawn shop, okay,
and he gets 2 years.
Caught.
Then he has to serve the
put on probation, right, for a year and a half,
right,
and then he smokes pot.
And
then he can get up to 15 years in prison for that violation. So it's almost a trap. And I don't think that marijuana has been that big of a problem for society. I mean, if
it sure wasn't for people like Bill Clinton. I mean, him talking about
Obama.
Bill, fessing up to smoking a little pot didn't really hurt him, did it?
Barack Obama outright says, "Here, let me play this."
Barack Obama said that as well?
Here, let me see if I can
me.
find this. I don't even know.
I think I heard something about that. But I mean, do we know for sure that he actually admitted to that?
Let me see if I got it.
Oh, he's pulling up a video?
Yeah, I'm pulling up a video. I gotta skip this in 15 seconds, so you can play it. But yeah, our Barack Obama. He admits. Maybe I'll edit this out. I'm gonna play it for you.
Why don't we try to get the number to like the would it be the White House? I mean, like how could you talk to the president? I mean, you have to like get on a waiting list or something.
Do you know there's a lot of people that think that Barack Obama is not president right now?
Yeah, I know. He actually is president until January 20th. I think is the date.
A month and a half or something, right?
Yeah, Trump takes it on January 20th. He's actually not president yet.
So, yeah, sure. Call up Barack Obama.
All right, here we go. Hold on. There it is.
Hello?
President Obama.
What?
Who is this?
Is this a joke?
This is Attorney William Moore. Listen,
Barack Obama.
how much pot do you smoke every day?
Excuse me. First of all, how did you get this number?
I know Michelle.
Oh, you do now?
Yeah, I defended somebody that I'm not even gonna go there. So, President Obama, do you still smoke a lot of pot?
Well, my presidency is over, so I might as well come clean with this. Yes, I do. Me and Michelle. And
Michelle.
Michelle
You and Michelle, that's what I thought.
Now, is she going to
you know, things get stressful in the White House. You got to just slow it down, roll one up. You know what I'm saying?
So is your
Mr. President, I think your wife is going to be she's probably going to kick you. I mean, you better be careful talking about your wife because she looks like the type of lady that's really going to...
Actually, here's a qualification: post-traumatic stress. Those that have nightmares over Obamacare.
Yes, we're trying to run that through right now.
You're trying to run that through right now.
I think you probably should give up on that because Trump is... I don't think he's down with it.
President Obama, thanks for taking our call. We really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to say to our listeners out there?
Well,
this is definitely
my fellow Americans. My fellow Americans, we need to get this law through. Medical marijuana.
It already passed, Mr. President.
It already passed, Mr. President. But that, you know what?
You're not high right now, are you?
Yeah, no, he's high right now.
A little bit. Really? I probably shouldn't have taken this call. They told me this phone was only for emergency services.
We hate to see you go. Well, you know.
Yeah, you've done a fine job, Mr. President. And anyway,
thank you very much.
It's been an honor to talk to you and everything. Ryan, did you want to ask him anything? Anything else before we...
Keep it real.
I can't believe
I urge my fellow Americans to try some of this.
My fellow Americans. All right, President Obama. Thanks for taking our call. Can we call you some other times when we have questions about the topics on our program?
Anytime. Any friend
of
the show is a friend of mine.
That's awesome.
Best of luck to you with the smooth transition of power and to the new president-elect Donald Trump.
Thank you for your service to this
He needs to try some of this.
Right, who didn't win from the popular vote, but you gotta love the Electoral College.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Kick their asses.
All right, well, you know what, Robert, President Obama, we are out of time. But for the 5 of you who are listening to this, thank you for tuning in. It's been a pleasure.
Peace.